It has home and trying to find a new back here with all of have been having so many technical difficulties. I'm a little out of breath. Jay's telling me behind the scenes my audio is going. I don't know, G, can you hear me now? Okay, well, hopefully we will have no more technical issues. I just booked it from the office to now at the dining room. I am in the beautiful Glendale, Arizona, which is just outside of Scottsdale, Phoenix area. Getting out of the 6 inches of snow Chicago is facing right now to be in 70-degree weather. Y'all, it is gorgeous here. So all these technical difficulties aren't even gonna faze me today because I am literally looking out. I'll show you this view right here, this gorgeous lake and mountain that my 4-year-old thinks is prehistoric dinosaur poop. So thank you all for everybody tuning in. Lauren says, breathe. Yes, I think I need my inhaler. I've been sick with influenza and it really took its toll on my lungs, and all of that running really got me going. Hey, Lori. Hey, Gregory. Hey, Trevor. Yolanda, everyone tuning in. Hello, hello, hello. It has been a while since I did a live, but I am so excited that I am coming to you today with a double header. First up this morning, we've got G. She is a certified UMAP coach. If you haven't heard of UMAP, I highly recommend you grab a copy of this international best-selling book by Kristen Cherry, who was just recognized as the top 50 most impactful people on LinkedIn. So without any further ado, please welcome G. She's a human resource leader and a strong advocate of self-discovery. And she's going to talk to us a little bit more today about the 4 pillars: how, why, what, who, and how that can impact you throughout your career as a leader and as a job seeker. Whew, G, we're here.
It's a mouthful. Hello, hello. Can you hear me okay, first of all?
I can hear you, but I have no idea what everybody else can hear.
Okay, I'm just looking, I'm seeing comments and I try never to engage too much like out of the corner of my eye, but it is so tough sometimes. But yay, Tegan,
I know, because
yay,
everything's going on, like right here, it's just popping up, popping up, popping up. Hey,
so I can hear you.
Margaret, Rebecca.
Oh my gosh, you've got such an amazing fan base and I'm a fan of yours. And, Tegan, I just want to start off again. Breathe. Let's you and I breathe together. But I'm so happy to be here and it's supporting everyone during the holidays. And there's just we could talk on and on forever about strengths and UMAP and how actually the two of them, marry, if you will. And I can get into that. But really just want to say thank you having me here. And yes, I'm Gehan Haridy. Oh, I just noticed like the name, the full on name is not there, and that's okay. But you know why? Because no one can pronounce it. So it's
I don't even try. Hey, G.
I just had this conversation with, I had an appointment this morning. I had this conversation. They're like, wait, what's your name? Who are you? And I said, it's G. I didn't pronounce it 3 times. It's Gehan Haridy-Ardanowski. I go by
Gehan is easy. The rest of it, that's a tongue twister.
Yeah,
but names are so important. It's important for people to know each other's names, but you do go by G, right?
I do. And GG, G-I-G-I. So yes, GG or G. And yes, as hi everyone, as Tegan mentioned, I'm Gehan G. Haridy-Ardanowski, and I am an HR manager on corporate HR side of HR, Landrum HR, and fairly new in my role. So I'm coming to you today with 80 different perspectives of how strengths has helped serve me in my job search and just in networking over the past several years. I've been on my strength soapbox, if you will, for the past, going on 10 years now. And great story of how I even came into strengths, but also subsequent to that, as you mentioned, Tegan, the whole UMAP process, which people, they've heard of Clifton Strengths or Strengths Finder. but not very familiar with 𝐓𝐿, but I can touch on that briefly. But yeah, really want to focus on strengths and how we, I live and breathe this stuff. I'm not a Gallup certified expert. So just to clarify, Clifton Strengths is through, oh, do you want me to give you my spiel right now? Or do you want to, I'm like, should I give my spiel about what strengths is, or how do you want me to do this?
Yeah, dive right into it, G.
Okay, great. So for those of you who've probably heard in the past of StrengthsFinder, it's the same thing. So Clifton Strengths, aka StrengthsFinder, based on your 34 talent themes. And it's not really a personality test per se. It's more based on your performance. So whereas if you've heard of Myers-Briggs, Enneagram, those are more personality type assessments. Whereas here, does a deeper dive into your 34 talent themes, and combined, you take an assessment, basically a 30 to 40 minute assessment, 177 questions, and out pops this amazing report that gives you your top 5 strengths based on 34. And those are the top 5 strengths that you lean into. And this is really particularly important for people who are struggling, especially in articulating, your value, your uniqueness. It's really focused more on that versus what your weaknesses are. So that's why I love strengths so much. So I could go on and on, but that's just a very, very high level explanation.
So for all of you who don't know me, I work with private clients, corporate organizations, and a bunch of different recruitment firms. I was a recruiter back in the day, and I didn't like it. I'll still do private searches now every once in a while for a few firms just because of my network. And that is one of my strengths. I'm a connector. However, something that has always stood out, whether I was in an HR capacity, a recruiter capacity, or even right now as a coach capacity, is leaders who develop their people, who really hone in on their people's strength and create organizational value out of it, stand out compared to the next person who just focuses on, pricing strategy or different operational improvements or technological advances. All of those in the weeds details of how an organization runs is critical to an organization's success. But without an organization's people, you ain't got nothing. And so I am here bringing G to talk about this, because when you're going throughout your career, oftentimes it's how do we improve? How do we improve? How do we improve? Well, how do we leverage our strengths? How do we leverage our strengths to grow, to get into that next role that we're interested in, to find our North Star and dig into it so we can have happier careers, healthier careers, and really enjoy what we do for 3/4 of our life. And so, G, kind of explain, because we see this in leadership, right? Every single one of us will probably say, I had that leader that developed me, who believed in me, who mentored me, and it catapulted my career. And we love when people do that for us. But how do we do that for ourselves? How do we look at our skills and identify those different categories, those different themes you were talking about, and use that to get us to where we want to go next?
Yeah, I mean, I guess a very abbreviated response to that would be it really comes down to self-awareness. And that's why, the thing about strengths and Clifton Strengths, StrengthsFinder, however you want to phrase it, it is so important coming into any process, I feel, especially and I should back up for a second too, to clarify. So while I am in HR leadership, if you will, I have an extensive recruitment background. I've been recruiting for 20 plus years. And so I've been on both sides of the table as both a job seeker and a recruiter. And one of the things that we really need to do a better job of, focusing on is when it comes to talent, ensuring that we're bringing on the best talent into the right roles in the first place. And so going back to your question, it's important for leaders to truly understand exactly what it is that's being sought for their roles, from whether, an incoming individual or someone transitioning into a different department, but also along with that, understanding, a bit about the person that they're bringing in. And so that's why a lot of times in our interview processes, You know, we've all heard that question, you know, what are your greatest strengths? And historically, what I have found as a recruiter, and this is even before I took strengths or even knew what it was many years ago, you know, people say, oh, I'm detail oriented or I'm this. And it's a very high level, glossy way of saying I'm a rock star, whatever you want to say. But there's not a lot of meat and merit to it. You know what I mean? And it's not very demonstrable in answering the question, like, okay, specifically. Whereas with strengths, you can say, you know, hey, I'm specifically strong in one of the 34 talent themes. So for instance, Tegan, you are an achiever, correct? I believe achiever is your number one.
That's my number one. Lord help me.
So, I mean, can we use you as a quick example just to say, hey,
feel free. Yes.
No, absolutely. So, I mean, so especially, you know, talking about you as an achiever, Tegan, how would that translate into your next role? And what would you see, you know, yourself being successful in, you know, with that as your number one strength? Like what makes you that amazing, standout, unique individual going into the next role? If I can just kind of role play for a second.
Yeah, let's do some interview, some pop-up interview. Okay, so throughout my career, regardless if I was working for the Department of Labor, when I was a recruiter, in my own business, in the contract roles that I hold now as a 1099 service provider, I come in as an achiever and I make things better. And so I have an uncanny ability to bring teams together to help inspire them to get on the same page and to walk towards the same goal, with the end goal of achieving a desired result, whatever that mission is, whatever that goal is for the organization. And so as an achiever, so this is totally winging it for everybody who's listening in, and I'm probably touching on a lot of my skills, my top skills right now, but as an achiever, it's really important for me to have a goal and to crush it.
Oh my, see, that is exactly, no, but that's exactly what needs to be communicated with our top, like you nailed it right there. And that's exactly what I was going for in terms of, you know, again, how can we best articulate and communicate, you know, our top skills, and especially in having these conversations and what makes us stand out about that. And the fact that you can easily speak to that. I can't tell you how many times.
I'm sweating right now. Like, oh, nobody likes being interviewed, G.
And you know, I love you. You know what though? The best thing that I love about strengths, and I'm sure you'll agree with this, is that it's a way to really speak to our best selves, right? And like, I'll use myself as an example, like with the responsibility, because responsibility is my number one strength. And, you know, and sometimes it's used to, you know, my own detriment at times, because it makes me very conscientious and thoughtful. But you know that short of getting hit by, I hate to use the bus analogy, but I'm going to get something done for you. And I might get a little bit stuck in moments, but you're going to get someone who's going to come to the table and know. Whereas conversely, and you're going to love this, so I'm going to flip it around. And I should also preface this with the focus of your strengths. If you have not taken the assessment yet, focus on your top 5 strengths. So before everybody runs to Gallup and starts downloading all these reports, because there's different options out there, there is a link to your top 5 strengths assessment. You want to focus on that. Those are the things.
The link is in the comments.
Thank you, Tegan. Awesome. And yes, so for me, analytical is my weakest. It's my number 34. Well, I spent 2 years, and I use this example a lot. It's actually what brought me into strengths in the first place almost 10 years ago, was that I spent 2 years in a financial analyst role. And every day I was just, I loved it. I worked for PwC, amazing, incredible, you know, number 1 accounting firm at the world at the time, you know, amazing, you know, people that I worked with and in projects, but I kept getting stuck and I couldn't figure out why.
Yeah.
And I was not my best self in that role, but I didn't know why. The very day that I left that role, long story short, I found out about strengths, and I've been on this mission since. So,
because we can really have a misalignment. I mean, we may think, oh, I think this opportunity is great, and I can see how I can fit in these areas here. But when we feel like there is a misalignment, when you leverage your top 5 strengths and you really look at it, it's blatantly obvious from someone on the outside looking in to say, oh, well, this is why you're struggling, because these areas aren't where you excel. And it's not like you can never be analytical because that's your 34 out of 35. It just means that maybe not be the type of role that you want to have the main feature 24/7. And there's flip sides to the strengths too. So I'm an achiever, but I'm never satisfied. It doesn't matter how successful I am, how much I achieve. I have to consciously be grateful and track my wins because I'm incredibly hard on myself. And so there are downsides to strengths too that you have to take into consideration when looking at it, to say, okay, well, on my top 5, it's futuristic. If I'm always thinking about the future, I may sometimes not take into consideration historical things that could impact how this new initiative or whatever it may be may impact an organization, or how there's different trends in hiring, for example, that I might want to be cognizant of, that if I'm only, future focused, I can be missing some things. So can you talk a little bit about that? How you want to be aware of, here are my top 5s, here are the things that I'm best at, and how those can also trickle into other areas that you want to be aware of, because it's not always the bright side of the strength.
Well, again,
I can hear you. Yeah, I can hear you.
Some kind of feedback. I don't know.
Here, let me mute myself.
Can you hear? Oh, I don't hear it now. Cool. Okay. And again, it goes back to that self-awareness that I was talking about, Tegan. I don't know if this is going to answer the question, but we don't want to be consumed, with strengths and just led, by our number 1 or 2. It's more of just having that understanding moving forward that, there are going to be, opportunities. Oh, well, I'll give you a great example. I'm kind of flipping around a little bit, but, sometimes when people retake their strengths, for example, like some of the strengths that are in their top 10 might move up, they might move around. And what that means is that sometimes not all of our strengths are, readily present on a given day. And so it's just knowing in the back of our minds that these are the areas that we're the strongest in. And for me, I think, and I'll give you another example with that analytical that I had mentioned, it's 34 now, which is the very bottom. In my first test take, it was number 30, right? So I've taken it twice. What that means though, and what I learned is that with that, and again, this was explained to me because I could not understand, well, why did it drop? But it made sense because I'm, again, very focused on it. It's exactly why though. It's because I had subconsciously been pushing that further and further down because it's just not a strength that I use. And there are places and times to use these strengths. And that's why not all of our strengths will be, prevalent like in the moment. But yeah, it's one of those self-awareness pieces where when we understand our best selves and where we thrive and where we might not necessarily, it just makes us better. And the best part about strengths though, too, especially in organizations, is when leaders understand what this concept is. And I've worked in companies before where some of my leaders have embraced strengths and they have been passionate about, hey, we build upon that. And are we utilizing our workforce in the best seats or the right seats on the bus, so to speak? And it could be something where, again, we just might not be. And so having that understanding and those conversations about where people are best suited and knowing that, it might not just be a performance issue. It might just be that they're in the wrong role, the wrong fit, but their heart's in the right place.
Okay, so Yolanda has a quick question right here. Yolanda, where'd it go? Okay, so she says, shouldn't you work on your 5 strengths? So what would you have to say? I mean, because you're a coach. At the end of the day, if anybody wants to personally work with G, take a look at your strengths, she's got time for you. But how do you, when someone goes and takes their Clifton strengths, you see your top 5, but then what do you do with them?
With it. Oh, okay, cool. I think you muted. Awesome. So great question. And I know Yolanda and she's fantastic. She's in my area. So yeah, I mean, it's important that you take the assessment, but going back to what you do with the information. And as someone used the expression recently, I heard shelf help. You kind of take the assessments and all these documents, you go to do something. stick it on a shelf somewhere. This is not that assessment. You can do a number of things with it. Again, if you're currently working actively, you can, again, speak to those within your organization. If your organization is receptive to, again, having those conversations, it just gives you better leverage to work on getting promoted or transitioning into different roles that would be, best suited for you. And you have a very strong argument as to why. Now, if you're, for example, a job seeker, you can speak to those in interviews. And as a previous, I like to say, recovered job seeker, this has served me well in the past. Now, mind you, I first did strengths 10 years ago. So back when it was Strengths Finder, I ended up doing the assessment. And, over the years, I was able to better learn to speak to those in my interviews. And, I think and just, on a side note, for those managers, hiring managers who are not familiar with strengths and what it means, when you walk into a conversation, knowing yourself, feeling good about what you've learned about your strengths and being able to communicate that to you as to how that can be a value add in the next role, that's a huge selling point. And I know, just as a recruiter, in talking to candidates who know their strengths and can speak to them and why they feel that they'd be a valuable asset, it's hugely helpful. Now, again, it's learning and understanding. You can do a variety of different things. First, you need to understand them, read through them, talk them through. It's great conversation with people. You'd be surprised at the number of people, even in comments here. And I don't know who all, in comments today has taken strengths. I know some familiar faces or names, if you will. I can't see faces, but just some of our supporters. And I know that they've taken strengths, and we, bounce things back and forth. Also, again, just to engage in, maybe some coaching, some conversations. I'm available, and my link will be available later. I'm not technically formally coaching full time right now, but I have set aside some slots for people to not only speak through their strengths with me if they've taken the assessment, but also how you can incorporate that into your branding, your personal branding, reflect that on your LinkedIn, speak to it in conversations. And again, it's a huge selling point just in networking, just having that confidence and feeling of empowerment. When you know yourself and you can articulate that, it's gold. It really is.
The self-awareness that it brings for yourself. Like, if you're a job seeker, the number one step in any job search is clarity. And I've got a resource. It used to be in my featured section. Anybody could download it for free, but it says start at your values. Look at your values. That is going to be your North Star of integrity is one of mine. If I feel like my integrity is being compromised, there's no way in hell I'm going to work for you. And then break it down from there. What are some of the things, some of the categories that are important to you? For some people, it's spirituality. For some people, it's family, community, fitness, etc. And then have different features, themes that tie into those, different values that tie into those categories in life. And then do a SWOT analysis on yourself. I think it was Gregory who said a SWOT, looking at your strengths, your threats, your opportunities and weaknesses. When you can clearly identify what your strengths are and how you leverage them at work, then your interviewing is going to be taken to the next level. And same thing with your weaknesses. It's important to be upfront and to say, I love the Gallup Strengths Finder, and, here are my top 5 strengths. Here's how they play out at work. However, when it comes to that pesky little, well, what's your weaknesses? I find that I'm not a very, whatever it may be, maybe it's analytical. And in work, I'm very conscious about taking roles where I have an analytics team to support me with analyzing the data so I can make data-informed decisions while activating people who are strong analytics so the business can still move forward. And that hasn't been a barrier to my success. And you can talk through, okay, well, here's the reality. I'm not the strongest at this, but I make sure to position myself with rock stars around me and my team to make sure that whatever it is that my weaknesses is, of course, I'm going to be working on it. But whatever it is, I've got a support system that's going to make it not be an issue. It's a mute point at that point. And so there's so many ways to access this or to leverage this information about your success, about yourself to move forward and push forward to getting the position you really want. Because what is the top reason for turning down someone? Like after you've already qualified them, you know you have the experience in the interview, how is it that people bomb?
You mean directly in the interview?
Yeah, in the interview where you're like, oh, I can't move this person forward, or the hiring manager is like, well, what was G thinking?
Well, again, and this can be another show too, but again, how someone looks on paper is not how they present themselves in an interview. And it goes back to, you can have the most perfect resume. And I know, Tegan, you are an expert rock star coach and you do all of your voodoo magic, right? And I'm not. Like, I tell people, again, I know my weaknesses are things that I'm not good at. I am not a resume writer. I'm great at the recruiting, but I'm not, necessarily the resume writer. Another great example, and I'm just going to use this for those of you who are job seekers and employers out there, we'll use recruiting and sourcing, for example. And this also ties back in, and I'll touch on briefly because you mentioned UMAP at the beginning, just to give a quick plug here to our coaches and to Kristen Sherry, who wrote this amazing book. But yes, UMAP is phenomenal. So what UMAP is, there's 4 pillars, and strengths is the foundation of that structure. But it also comes back to skills, your values, and then of course your personality. And it basically connects the dots. And there's a lot more on UMAP, and that's another separate conversation. But part of that though too, with skills, like I know, for example, I love recruiting, but I have been very, very candid. I love talking to people. I love, putting creative content together to, engage people. But I am not a transactional sourcer. I cannot sit and literally for hours on end send emails and do but there are sourcers out there who that is what they love to do. That is their sweet spot. And again, there's a seat on the bus for everybody. And once we know their strengths, that's important. So again, I don't know if did I actually answer the question though about like who bombs, but I think really at the end of the day, it comes down to when you come to an interview, and this is really specific to job seekers and those even, looking internally to transition into something else, you really need to know yourself and have that confidence. And we, as the employer, can't do that for you. And those are things that when you're going, you need to stand in that uniqueness, because the thing about strengths, and whoever's in comments and might be able to correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I believe it's 1 in 33 million have the same top 5 in the same order, if I've got that stat correct. And I want to say honestly, like when you have your top 5 nailed down and you know how they work and why they work for you, how you can articulate that in your LinkedIn. If you can do TikToks, there's a lot of content on TikTok about people with strengths and the pop-ups and energy. When you can articulate that, you're really moving, you're setting yourself, your best foot forward, if you will, over people who don't know themselves and don't have that confidence. Because at the end of the day, everybody's looking for a job and you can have the same credentials as someone else. But what makes you unique and shine are your strengths and how you articulate those in the process. So,
and that's exactly it. When you're in the interview process, if you can't articulate your secret sauce, your unique value proposition, you're not going to get moved forward. And so, like G says, I work my voodoo on people's resumes and LinkedIn profiles. But if you can't then articulate that in an interview, you're not going to move forward. And so like when I'm working with a client, I do a 90-minute deep dive with someone, and I am booked out through the end of the year deep into January. So this is not a sales pitch by any means, but this is just the process. I do a 90-minute deep dive with someone to truly get to know them and how they articulate things when it doesn't matter, when the stakes aren't high, and dig deep into, well, why, well, how, and what was the result? And then craft a tailored story for them. Storytelling is so powerful. When you can articulate those strengths and the results that come out of those strengths, that's where magic happens. And when people fail in the interview, or when they're pitching themselves for a stretch assignment at work or whatever the case may be, it's if you can't articulate your value. Why should you be held accountable or be given this opportunity to have this responsibility? above and beyond someone else. And so it's really, really important to stand out in an interview if you are a job seeker, to not only know your strengths, but know how they play out in different career stories. So when I was working for the Department of Labor, I saw that there was a disconnect with staff and some training and some areas of opportunity. But my heart is in it for my students, right? So I created a mentorship program. This gave staff the opportunity to have their strengths come to the forefront. So there was one lady in the dorm and she loved to knit, right? And so I found, the different students who, were into the arts and crafts stuff. She then became their mentor, and her performance evaluations did a 180 because she was then able to thrive in just this little area, and it trickled over. And the end result was I got congressional recognition for this program I created. And so when you can say, this is what I did, I created a mentorship program. I got congressional recognition, but this was the true impact on the people we served and the coworkers I led. That's where your interviews, like if you're getting rated from a 1 to 5 scale, with 3 being meets expectations, right? But a 5 being exceeds expectations. If you can only give a 3 answer in an interview, you're not going to get the job, because there's going to be somebody else who put in 2 more hours of work, that knew themselves a little bit better and tied the stories together with their strengths a little bit more to get to that 4. And then there's going to be one person who put in the 20 extra hours of work, and you don't have to put in that amount of work for every single interview. These are all the interviews you're going on. These stories should be consistent, because if you have clarity when you're on your job search, you shouldn't be applying to 1,000 different random jobs. You should be really focused on your core target. So all of these interview prep questions and answers are going to be recurring themes in your different interviews. And then you're going to be able to take that 3 to a 4 and a 4 to a 5. And then you're going to get an offer. And then you're going to be quickly promoted, because you know how to advocate for yourself. You know how to raise your hand for projects that align with your strengths and values. You know how to seek out leaders who are going to be able to be that support system and collaborate effectively with you. So G, we are running a little bit over. I know we had all sorts of tech issues with my camera, my mic, shoot, the outlet in the wall, your restream wasn't pairing, but
sorry guys.
I want to make sure we give, lots of taste into how these things play out. But here's the tricky thing, guys, for everyone tuning in. If you can't put the pieces together yourself, it's okay to ask for help. It is okay to talk to someone else about your strengths and have them paint that picture for you. And you say, yeah, I agree with that. Or that's close. I actually think it's closer to this, which brings you closer to yourself. And so, G, how is it that people who are interested in having a customized solution, a customized consultation, can work with you to get closer as to how they can personally use their strengths with whatever their goal is, that being a promotion, a stretch assignment, a new job, or just being a better leader to their team?
Oh my God. Well, thank you. And thank you for asking. Before I do give my information, I really just want to make one more comment. And this is just begging everybody, please, because I know this comes up a lot. There is nothing wrong with shameless self-promotion. There's a difference between confidence and arrogance. And once you learn and really know yourself, it is so important to put that out there to the masses. Shameless self-promotion is just key. That is what, again, employers want to see. They want to see that confidence. And again, I'm speaking because I know in Tegan, I'm just going right now with the job seeker. I know we've got a mixed audience out there, but I just really, want to impress upon your viewers, your fans, that there are so many employers out there. I just got a job a couple of months ago after being out of work for 2.5 years. Now, mind you, but I also spun, some things for myself, including I started my own little, LLC, if you will, and started doing consulting projects and coaching and really good things. But I'm with a company now that and I just want to give this as a little bit of a ray of hope, because I now work for a company I'm very proud to work with. And in the interview process, we talked about strengths, and I kept emphasizing, I am not good at XYZ. I will not be your person for XYZ. I made it abundantly clear what I was and was not good at, because I knew myself, and I knew if this wasn't the right role, that would be okay. And so I really just want to leave everybody with that messaging of, once you know yourselves in this area and can, articulate and best speak to that, the opportunities are really limitless. So I really just wanted to encourage that. And as for getting in touch with me, I'm on LinkedIn. Please, if you do send me an invitation to connect, I'm very open to connecting, but I get a lot of generic, empty, naked invites, however you want to phrase them. And a lot of times, and I write on this too, by the way, you can follow my content, direct with me or connect with me directly. If you do send me a personalized note, just tell me that, hey, we met here today. And as for, a session one-on-one, I believe there's a Calendly link in the comments that you can set up a half hour with me. But again, this is not a primary sales pitch, but there are some time slots between now and into early January that I'd love to help connect the dots for some of you and speak more on UMAP strengths, however that may look. So just send me a message, DM me, connect, however that looks to you. So does that do it, Tegan?
Yes. So for everyone tuning in and who is active in the conversations in the chat, we appreciate you. Gregory, Carol, Lori, and so many other people who were putting in their 2 cents. We love that engagement. I only had one screen working on here today because I didn't bring my whole system. So I am going to reply back to all of you now. And like G said, if it's something specific for her, do not hesitate to reach out. Closed mouths do not get fed, and your vibe attracts your tribe. So make sure that anybody who RSVP'd to this event today, you're clicking network, you're responding to them. Hey, what brought you to the Strengths Live? Would love to chat with you about it further. Go ahead and cultivate conversations based on this live where you were kind of behind the scenes. Some of you were chatting with each other in the chat, but take it to the next step, because at the end of the day, good people know good people. And if you want to really activate your strengths and move forward with your goals, it's going to take a village. And so go out there, meet other great people, enjoy this holiday season. And if you are a job seeker, if me and G can do anything for you, don't hesitate to reach out. We will provide you the resources that we can, recommendations to other resources. And if you're really struggling with figuring out, hey, what are my strengths? I highly, highly, highly recommend the UMAP book, because it is a step-by-step guide to taking your strengths and figuring out, okay, what drives me? Who's my backseat driver, and what fuel do I have in my tank? Because you need all of those pieces to connect the story, which will help you become a better storyteller. So with that, G, thank you so much for being here. For those of you who want to piggyback on my 2 o'clock conversation, I am meeting with a director of recruitment, a hiring manager, and someone who recently transitioned. And we are going to be bouncing off these strengths, because it is really important that you find a good fit in your career so that you're happy in your life. G, anything else?
Yeah, and again, a lot of information, folks. And I know the UMAP book was put up, but also you've got your Discover Your Strengths. You don't need the book. You don't even necessarily need to run out and spend a lot of money on the books right now. But the very first step, if I can encourage it, at least if nothing else, go to Gallup.com. There's a link, I believe, in comments in my feed. Gallup.com. Do your $19.99. That's cost $20, if you will. Do the strengths test. Like I said, 177 questions, takes about a half hour, spits out your top 5. Don't focus on anything else. Start there. If you want one takeaway from today, start there, connect with Tegan and I, like she said, and we're going to help you, however we can. So that's pretty much it. But thank you so much, Tegan. Tech issues aside, we did it. I'm excited.
Yeah, we did it, and we're definitely going to have to do it again. So for those of you, I am predicting in 2023, another G and Tegan collaboration where we maybe do like a Zoom or something where everybody can participate, because I think people were itching to join the conversation verbally, not just in the chats. So for everybody, have a wonderful day, and we will see you all soon.